A request for a dento-legal report can come from a number of different sources: your patient or their representative, from another dental professional, the police, an insurance company, or even the GDC. We always advise members to take the time and trouble to get the report exactly right. It is well worth it in the long run. A dento-legal report is quite different from a clinical report. It is a detailed, factual, chronological account of the events involved in your treatment of a patient. Your report must be based on first-hand evidence, what you discussed with the patient, what you found, and what you did for them, rather than on events before or after they saw you. It does not need to be complicated, quite the opposite. In fact, the clearer, more logical and self-explanatory your report, the better. And remember that almost without exception, you will need the patient's consent to provide such a report. There are a few simple guidelines to bear in mind when you write up your report. Some of them are really basic, but it's easy to want to get on and tell the story, and the basics can get forgotten. First, identify yourself. Give your name and qualifications in full and describe your status: dentist, maxillofacial consultant, dental nurse, and so on. It's also important to say what your role was at the time of the incident you are reporting on. Then explain your contact with the patient. Are you the patient's dentist? Did you see the patient privately or on the NHS? Why did they come to see you? Was the patient alone or accompanied during consultations? If someone else was present, state their name and status, for example, a parent or a social worker. You'll need to give these details for every consultation. It's good style to write in the first person. So, for example, you would write, "I excavated the caries from the tooth and I found a pulpal exposure," rather than, "Caries was excavated from the tooth and a pulpal exposure was found." That way, it's clear to the reader who did what. Most importantly, you will need to demonstrate that your history and examination were thorough. You should include the patient's symptoms and history, what you found on examination, your diagnosis and treatment, and any complications that arose. It might also be appropriate to include details of the cost of treatment. Remember that negative information is important too, so state what you looked for but did not find. Many of the details you include in your report will be recorded in the patient's notes, but the events in question may have happened many months or even years before. In that case, it is acceptable to describe what you remember or what your usual practice would have been in the circumstances. The main thing is to state clearly which details are based on the notes and which on memory or your usual practice. Be as thorough as possible and try to avoid jargon. For example, when you mention a drug, give its full generic name, the dosage and route of administration. It can be helpful to attach a copy of all the relevant clinical notes too. For clarity, you might want to provide a word-for-word transcript if necessary. If other clinicians are involved, then you will need to name them and give their professional status. And while you can describe your understanding of what they did and the conclusions they reached, you should not in any way criticise their performance. That's a matter for an independent expert who has never treated the patient. Finally, carefully check your report for factual accuracy against the clinical records and ensure that you would be happy to stand by everything in your report if you were called to present it as evidence in court. If you need assistance with writing a dento-legal report, please call the DDU Advisory Helpline.